Hi everyone, welcome to Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to talk about mediation agreements and how to use them and how to make them work for you and how to have enforceable power on that agreement. But first, you have to know what has to go into a mediation agreement. Otherwise, the more ambiguous it is, the less a judge is going to have to enforce. So today we're going to talk about mediation agreements and how to make them as detailed as possible so that you can have a document that can be enforced by a judge. If the district decides they're going to pretend that you never had that mediation agreement. Yes. So get ready and we're going to dive right into it. Okay, so let's get down to business. The first thing you guys have to understand is that mediation is voluntary. A school district, by the very request, does not mean you have to do it. You don't have to do anything, the school says. And I mean nothing, including mediation. If they file for a hearing, then you have to go to hearing, but there's different ways to get around that. But when it comes to mediation, it's voluntary. Okay, so the district can't say, well, we have to do mediation. No, we don't. If the State Department of Education says, well, you have to do mediation. No, you don't. Mediation is voluntary. See what it says right here? Is voluntary. Okay, that's number one. So the purpose of mediation is to resolve the issues that you guys are having. Now, the best way to do that is to figure out what are your issues. What are you complaining about? You write them down. Because when you go to the mediation, the school district is going to change what you want the mediation to be about to what they want it to be about. And that's to narrow the issue and change the whole thing around. So if you go to mediation, make sure you write down everything that you want to go into that mediation agreement. If you don't make this very detailed, then the mediation agreement is not worth the paper it's written on. You have to understand a mediation agreement is a contract between you and the school district. Legitimately, legally, it's a contract. It has a date, it has people's signatures on it, it has a start and an end date. Okay? That's a contract. And it's supposed to detail what the parties agreed to. Okay? So when you go into a mediation agreement, you have to make sure that your agreement, if you wanted 30 hours of compensatory services for speech and language, okay. So you have to make sure that it says literally compensatory services. There's a whole section for compensatory services. You make a whole section about compensatory services. And in that you put in the date it starts, the date it ends. You put the person's credentials for that particular discipline, like a speech and language pathologist, not necessarily the person's name. Do not, in fact, put the person's name, because the district will say, well, you wanted this person, that person left. So now you don't have a thing. So don't put the person's name. You just put the discipline and that the person must be licensed and or certified under state law to be the speech and language pathologist. Okay, to deliver compensatory services to your kid. And it doesn't matter during this what the school district says. We don't have one. None of that matters. Tell them that's what you want. Okay, so you go down the list and you tell them exactly what you want. And if they agree, fine. And if they don't, then, you just continue on your road to filing a complaint. Okay, because that's what you're going to do. So now they actually have a heads up on what you're going to do. Okay, so now what you also have to understand that while the law says that the discussion between you and the school district cannot be used in a hearing, it can be used? The actual mediation agreement. It's a legal binding contract. And the law is clear. The law says that you cannot. Here it is. Okay, here it is right here. If the parties resolve a dispute through mediation process, the parties must execute a legally binding agreement that sets forth that the resolution and that it states that all discussions that occur during the mediation process will remain confidential and may not be used as evidence in any subsequent due process hearing or civil proceeding. Okay, so that's fine. But you can use the mediation agreement because it's a legal binding contract. So they can't stop you. So whatever's in that contract, suffice it to say that the discussion led to the agreement. So you can't talk about the discussion because sometimes it gets quite hairy and crazy and stuff. Okay, so remember that. The document, it's a written document, so it has to be signed by everybody sitting there. And here's the enforceable part. So the reason why it has to be detailed is because a judge can't enforce a document that doesn't have anything in it. And it can't be, therefore it can't be ambiguous. Okay? So when the school district says, yes, we'll give you compensatory services, we'll give you speech and language, yeah, no. They have to put the amount of speech and language, the hours, the sessions, like that. Okay? 3 times 30, that equals to a 30 hours of speech and language services. Then you have to get into how are they going to provide you with information that those services were delivered. And so you want documentation. You want the data from the person who's delivering the services. Okay? So every time, basically she's signing in and out. Whoever it is signing in and out. This is what they did. This is how they did it. This is how they made up the compensatory services. This is what they worked on. Okay? So you want that in there. You want data on logging in and logging out, basically. That's what you want you want proof. And they'll say, well, no, there's no typically. This is what you want in the agreement. They're agreeing to give you compensatory service. Now, remember, let's say hypothetically this doesn't fly and you guys don't have a mediation agreement. It's okay. Because what they're going to do is that, let's say you're in a hearing or you file for a complaint. What the school district will say is that, well, we agreed to give her the compensatory services, yeah, but yada, 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 yada. She said no. What they're not going to say is, well, you didn't want to give me proof. So when you have to get in front of that kind of stuff. So when you file your complaint or your due process hearing, which I'm telling you don't do, if you file the complaint, you make sure to say that during the mediation, you could say, oh no, because you can't use that discussion. That's what it is, okay? That's why you can't use the discussion. So, but if the school district comes back and brings up the discussion, well, we offered it and she said no, that's not what happened. So now they violate. If they told the mediator or a hearing officer that she refused to sign the mediation agreement because there was no agreement, there was nothing in it. And then the hearing officer will say, and furthermore, they just opened Pandora's box. So I guess now I'm going to be able to tell you everything. You see, there is a video on this, and I will do another video if you have any questions about this. Okay, this is just a quickie to let you know the tips that I used when I went into mediation. And the main thing is that your mediation agreement has to include the dates something is going to occur, who is going to provide it, their certification, their license, not their names, and how you're going to determine, how you're going to know that they actually did this. Okay? Because they're going to say, well, there's not enough time in the day. Listen, none of that's your problem. Tell them to give you the money then. They can give you the money and you can go do it on Saturdays or something. It doesn't matter. But that's the agreement. Okay? So they're going to tell you a whole lot of nonsense about the reasons why they can't give you what you want during this mediation agreement. And you can look at them and say, then I don't understand why you requested a mediation. I agreed to it thinking that we're going to come to the table and we're going to reach a resolution. And you came to the table to tell me all the things you can't do, which is how you got in trouble in the first place. Yeah. And another thing, school districts can't ask for mediation to slow the process of a due process hearing or a complaint. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of laws about that too. A whole bunch of things they can't do. Okay, so you have to understand that it's voluntary. If you guys don't understand anything else of this video, you have to understand this. Here it is right here. And it is not used to deny or delay a parent's right to a hearing on the parent's due process complaint or to deny any other rights afforded under Part B. They can't use it and then say, well, they're hiding behind the law. That's called under color of law. They can't use a law to violate your rights and then use that law against you. They can't do that. They can't do that. Okay? And it talks about the people that have to be, how they have to be credentialed. So, okay. And you don't pay for mediation at all. It's through the school. The school has to pay for it. The state actually pays for the mediation. And it's only 1 day. You don't have mediation for 6 days or 2 days or 1 day or what. You don't do that, because what you're doing is you're giving them an opportunity to tweak out what they already offered you. So you're not doing that. It's 1 day alone. It's a one-off. For sure, it's a one-off. Okay? So don't let them try to tell you, well, we can figure this out. No, we're not. We're doing it today. I don't care if it takes 12 hours. We're doing it today because this is the last time I'm coming to the table. This is what I want, and you hand it to them. This is what I want. And those are the reasons why. And so it's real easy. It's either yes or no. And they have to come up with a way of how they're going to give you all of that stuff. They can't just say, okay, well, no, write me a check. I'll go get his services down the street. I don't care. Okay? That's how you get them. And it talks about the impartial mediator, okay? Who this person is. 9 times out of 10, they are not impartial. I have had to chew out many a facilitator and a mediator because they were on the side of the school district. And so they were telling me what I couldn't do and what they can. And I was like, that's a violation of the law. They can't. A mediator is to bring the parties together, not by siding with the other party, one party versus another. That's not what a mediator does. It's just not. So that's how you do that. Okay? Okay, I want to go into a little bit more detail about the mediation agreement being a enforceable document by a judge. Okay, so right here it says, okay, the mediation agreement under this paragraph is enforceable in any state court of competent jurisdiction or in a district court of the United States, which means all you have to do is go to your local courthouse, okay, and you go to the clerk's office, and you tell them what you want to do. You want to enforce this mediation agreement. It's a legal binding contract. Now, when you go to court, they're going to tell you need a lawyer. You don't need a lawyer to do this. You're an American citizen. So you tell them, just give me the paperwork. And if you can't find it, you call me, because all of the paperwork that you need to get this order from the judge is online in your state, in your courthouse. Okay? So you have to fill up the paperwork. There may be a fee that you have to pay. Now, if you're indigent, if you're low income, if you're no income, doesn't mean you don't have access to the courthouse. It means that you have to fill out papers that it's all about indigency. Okay? So you ask them for those papers. And if you want to know more about this, you let me know and I'll show you. Okay? I can show you on how to get it in court. I can show you what to look for. There's certain things you have to look for. Okay? You got to find out what department in the courthouse it is and all of that. But suffice it to say, somebody in that courthouse can tell you where to file it and what department you go to. I've done it before. It's not that hard. Now, sometimes these clerks of courts, no offense, but sometimes they think they're lawyers, and you just tell them, listen, this is what the law says. And then you cite this law. You cite this particular law right here. See? It's right there. You cite that law. 34 CFR 300.506B7. That's all you have to do. Here's my mediation agreement. Here's all the signatures. Here's a date. It's a contract. I want this contract enforced. I want an enforcement order from the judge. I don't care what words they use for an enforcement order. Bottom line, you want an order from a judge. That's what you say to them. I need an order for a judge for the school district implement their mediation agreement. And another thing, a mediation agreement is only 1 year. So if you wait until the end of the year to go and get an enforcement order, no. You got to get the enforcement order the day, you find that they're not doing it within that year's time. That's what you have to do. Okay? You have to go to a judge. Do not file anything with the State Department of Education because they're dumb. They're not going to do anything about it anyway. Go to a judge. That's what the law says you could do. That covers everybody. And then you send that order. You send a copy of it to the state and you say, this is what I had to do because you guys aren't doing your job. You guys are supposed to monitor them to make sure that they're doing their job with idea, and you're not doing jack doodly squat. And I can show you the laws where it says Massachusetts got in trouble for this, where it says that they have to monitor the districts to make sure that they're following the letter of the law. So if you get an order from a judge, that's going to look real bad on the state, because now you can take that to the next level. And I know right now the federal government and the Department of Education, it's just poo-poo caca. The federal laws are still there. And right now, it doesn't matter. Send it anyway. You send it to the Office of Special Education Programs. I don't care if they're not there. Let it come back to you. Because if you ever have to go in front of a federal, because these are federal laws. So you don't even have to go to district court. You can go to a federal court and get that mediation agreement done, because that's a federal law that says they have to do it. Not a district court, not Supreme Court, federal court judge. Okay? And it's the same process. You just go to them and you say, I need an enforcement order from the judge. They're not doing their job, period. They're not enforcing this agreement. We had an agreement. They ain't doing it. I need you to do it. Now, the school district's going to come back and say, well, now the district's going to come back and try to dispute what's in there. That's why it has to be very, very detailed, because you can't give them an escape hatch. You have to make sure, because if you have to call them on it, they're going to come back and say, we never said that. That's not in the mediation agreement. It's the first thing their lawyers are going to say. That's not in the mediation agreement. Make sure everything you need is in that mediation. Dates, time, location, title, certification, licenses. All of that is in there. For 1 year. They got 1 year to do this. Okay? Now, if they don't do it again, you can, because here's the thing. While that mediation agreement is only 1 year, you can go back a year to file against them. So you can go back and file against them again for the year they screwed up. Yeah. So the mediation agreement is about the year that you're in. If they don't implement the mediation agreement, then you go to a judge and you get the enforcement order. But remember that you can also, even though that mediation agreement is over, because they didn't implement it, they made it null and void. If they do not implement it, it's null and void. Okay, so now you can go back to the year that when you created that mediation agreement. Oh yeah. That's how you have to think. I'm telling you guys right now, there's a whole new way of thinking that you have to do to protect yourself. And it's different. You can't rely on these people. You can't for 1 second have any faith in their ability to be competent or to do their job. I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's true. Based on what's going on right now, the only person you can trust is you, yourself, and yourself. That's it. You can't trust anybody, especially with your kid. If they say it's blue, you make them prove it. You tell them, give me the document. I want to see if it's really blue. I don't believe you. You can't believe anything that's coming out of their mouth. You cannot. Because they lie, like I told you before. These people would rather climb a mountain to tell a lie than stand on the ground and tell the truth. That's who you're dealing with. And they think it's okay nowadays to do that. Because even when you call them out, they just look at you like you're crazy, like, I didn't do that. You did do that. So anyway, so I wanted to come back and let you know to take them to court if they're not any part of the mediation agreement that they're not implementing. The more reasons they tell you why they can't implement it, make sure it's in writing. Never call them on the phone. Never talk to them on the phone. You put it in writing. Let them put it in writing that they could not implement it because of yada, yada, yada. Do yourself a favor and let them put it in writing. Because when you go to court to get the enforcement order, you attach those documents. There's nothing in the mediation agreement about exceptions. Do not allow them to put exceptions in the mediation agreement. No, it's either this or nothing at all. This is what I want. That's the only thing I'm signing. You have to do your job. You tell them you have to do your job. You didn't do it before, and now you're trying to get around not doing it again by putting all these little loopholes in there. No loopholes. No. It's very simple. Okay, so I hope this helps you guys out. Let me know and we can go into more detail about mediation agreements. I really don't like them either, and I really don't like hearings. They're just a loophole waiting to happen. I believe in the complaint process because the written complaint process, because it works. It's always worked for me. It leaves out a lot. It's a lot easier to do a complaint, file a written complaint than it is to go to hearing or even go to mediation. because one of them, the filing the complaint will force them to ask you to go to mediation. And you can say yes, or you can say no. What they can't say is you have to. You don't have to. You do not have to go to mediation. It's voluntary. You have to remember that, because they think they're all of that in a bag of chips, and they think they have all the power in the world. And let me tell you something, they're hurting right now. They are hurting because a whole bunch of money they're not going to get. Now they got to go fight the very president that they voted into office. Now they have to go fight him to get their money, or you're going to hear a lot of, we just don't have the money. Don't care, because you know what we do have? Idea. Because any executive orders that have been signed, they're not laws, which means idea still stands. So, and if idea still stands, that means that the school districts are still responsible. So, after I've reviewed the video, I realized that I didn't tell you one very important thing. And that important thing is this. Once you sign that mediation agreement, you are waiving all of your rights to take them to hearing or to file against them in, a state complaint from the day you sign that backwards. Okay, so all of any potential or alleged allegations of denial of faith or violation of the IEP, all of that goes away once you sign that mediation agreement. So before you put your John Hancock on it, they're going to give you a copy of it. And before you sign it, you sit there and read it. And if you have questions, you ask them, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? You do not sign that agreement unless you are sure that you're going to get what you want out of the deal, because if they have a lot of violations, you're going to say, never mind, I don't care nothing about that. I just want this and this. Okay? That's called a quid pro quo. They're going to give you all of the stuff you want, and you're going to release them of any wrongdoing from the day you signed it backwards. Now, you also have to understand that the district cannot tell you to sign a mediation agreement that says that you're waiving your rights to future IDEA regulations. No, you don't do none of that. If it says the word future in there, don't sign it. That's illegal. You can't write an illegal contract too. So the district, when they put that in there, their argument is, well, the parent signed it. Yeah, but it's illegal. That means it's null and void. You cannot write an illegal contract. That's a legal binding contract. I showed you the law. It says right in there. It binds the school district to whatever is in that agreement that you both signed. Okay? So you can only go backwards for any allegations you had against them that weren't included, or were included actually, in that mediation agreement. So that's why it's very, very important that when you do a mediation agreement, that you have dates, you have times, you have when it's going to start and when it's going to end. You have the person the type of personnel that's going to implement that particular piece of the mediation agreement. The type meaning that their title, their credentials, that goes in there. Okay? You have to make sure that you do this right the first time, because if you go into that mediation agreement and you sign that, and then you find out later that you waived all of those rights to IDEA, do not sign it. You give it back to them and you tell them. If they put in their future, past, present, and future, you say absolutely not. I am only waiving today backwards. Anything that happened today backwards, I'm waiving. But you got to give me this, what's in here. If they don't give it to you, don't sign it, because you're waiving too much. You can get way more with a well-written complaint against the school district than you can. Now, here's another tip. Usually, when the school district wants to have, calls you and says, we want to do mediation, 9 times out of 10, they want to do mediation because, 1, they know who you are, and they know you don't have a problem filing complaints. Or 2, they know who you are. They're trying to get in front of it, okay? Because they know what they did was wrong. So that's a good sign. When the school district comes to you, because they have the big guns, they have their top lawyers. They have a lawyer, rather. It may not be top, but they have a lawyer. You don't. So they already have an advantage over you. So what you want to make sure is that the mediation agreement is not ambiguous and it is very, very specific. And if they don't like it, oh well, you get up and you say, I guess we're done here. Do not argue with them about why you're asking for all of this stuff. The fact that if you get into an argument with the school district about the specifics that you want included in a mediation agreement and they're arguing with you, their intention now is to not implement that mediation agreement and they just tip their hands. You need to get up and walk out. They're lying. They're not going to do anything. You're going to have to go to court, force them. You're going to have to publish it and so everybody could see it, send it to the media, all kind of nasty stuff. That's what you do, though. When they don't do what they're agreeing to do in writing, you go hard. You send it to the media. You put it out there because it's a mediation agreement. Once it's signed, it's not confidential now. It's not. Once that mediation agreement is signed, you can go and give it to a lawyer. You see my guinea pig? I zoom in there because she's crazy. But anyway, so I had to come back and tell you guys that because I forgot and I should have put it in the middle, but I didn't. So it was at the end. So we'll talk about it some more on Thursday night because I messed it up. But I hope I gave you what you needed. I hope you like this Tip Tuesday and we'll talk some more. Thanks. See you guys on Thursday. Remember, subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Facebook. And support my channel by all the links that I have available on there in my bio and on Facebook. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.